Scott D Perron, how are you doing? Welcome.
I am doing well.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I'm actually really happy to have you on the show because I've been targeting you for years, trying to get you to come on.
Yes, I've been getting a lot of calls. My manager's been getting a lot of calls. Yeah.
So you're a good friend of mine. You and I met, and we've been great friends ever since. In fact, just past weekend, we with a couple other guys, we went to the Van Halen concert.
That was fantastic.
Wasn't that great?
Oh, and thanks for the invite. Really, it was a good time, and I was absolutely blown away by how well 76-year-old Sammy Hagar is performing.
You know, I'm a huge Sammy Hagar fan, and when he joined Van Halen after David Lee Roth left, I was very, very pleased. But some of my friends at the time were like, pro Roth. So they were like, no, man, we can't listen to Van Halen anymore because David Lee Roth was the man, and he's no longer in the band. And I'm like, no, man, good music is good music. I think they got better.
I would agree.
With Van Hagar.
Van Hagar. Well, I think David Lee Roth served his purpose, and he certainly was the female attraction portion of the band, meaning he could attract the female audience like nobody else. Not that Hagar couldn't, but Hagar, in my opinion, is rock and roll. And obviously, 76, still rocking, voice still amazing. And what was amazing to me at the concert the other night was how selfless he was about signing autographs for people throwing all kinds. I mean, throughout the entire show, as he's singing or not singing, he's signing autographs. Sure, it's hats, album covers, the whole bit. It was pretty impressive. It's
an incredible how comfortable he is up there, and how he realizes that he's the man that, everyone's there to see him, right? And he puts on a show.
Yes, that's his calling for sure.
And then Joe Satriani, that was my first time ever seeing him play. Now, that guy's a living legend.
And the fact, one of the songs they did where he was mimicking Eddie Van Halen's solo, and they were playing Eddie Van Halen video behind him as he was playing the same riffs, and it was almost identical. Like he was honoring Eddie by playing it the way Eddie played it when he was in the band.
And isn't it wonderful seeing Jason Bonham, especially that drum kit he had, which he honored his father?
Yes, with all the bass skins were covered with his dad's picture.
Right, and I've never seen Led Zeppelin, but to me, Led Zeppelin's that's like they're the kings of rock and roll to me, right? And the fact that I could see his son play,
and
amazing.
Jason's my age, and he's just a killer drummer.
Did you ever see the Led Zeppelin experience with Jason Bonham?
No.
Okay, so what he does is he has a couple younger guys, hotshot guitarist and singer and bass player, and the four of them go out and they cover Led Zeppelin songs, right?
Okay.
And he tells a little story between each song. So he'll tell you, how the song was written or why it was written, and he tells stories about his dad.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's very interesting.
I love to see anybody speak well of their parents, whether they're entertainment or anything else.
True.
And, before I forget, in honor of our first meeting where we met, I brought you a little gift today.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
And I figured you go ahead and open it because
I love it.
You're
the first guest to actually bring me something.
I mean, my mother and father always said you never go anywhere empty-handed, especially when somebody's doing something for you.
Well, K-Rock loves gifts.
Yeah, well, I think you'll love this one.
Look, oh my goodness. This actually is my favorite.
Of course.
There's no doubt.
And it's a rock and roll show, so what's wrong with bringing a bottle of hooch,
I was actually thinking wine, and all of a sudden I got pleasantly surprised. Thank you so much.
I've never seen you drink wine. That I've seen you drink.
No, this is fantastic. I'm really appreciative of that. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, sir. My pleasure.
Yeah, well, we'll just
That's
leave
right.
it up.
Yeah, we'll just leave it out there. Why not?
What's so funny is that if we were true rock and roll stars, man, we would open this thing up and start drinking.
Well, I didn't see any shot glasses, so I wasn't sure if.
Going to concerts is my passion. I'm a musician, obviously, and I love to perform, but I'm such a small level. I'm just a bass player in a local little cover band, and sometimes we play for a couple hundred people here and there. Well, we had one big show where there was a lot more people, but sometimes when I go to a show like that and I breathe it in, I take it in, and I close my eyes and I can hear it and I feel it. And I say, what would it be like to be on a stage of that size and to play in front of those kind of people? Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah, and I think you guys underestimate your talent, and that means anybody that's playing in a band. I mean, obviously there's good and bad musicians, but regardless of that, to get up on a stage and take out an instrument and play with a group of people, and like you said, you don't do it professionally as a living necessarily, but you guys are ramping up, and just in the short time I've known you, you guys have gotten bigger and bigger and better each time. And it's a testament to you, and not to bag on anybody else in your band. Your band's amazing. I love all those folks. But you're doing a lot of work behind the scenes, doing the little things to get you one notch beyond where you were before. The difference between people who get things done and succeed in life is doing something each day to get to your goal. And a lot of people forget that. They're waiting for something good to happen instead of going out and making something good happen.
You know what? As we spoke about on your show about a couple of months ago, being in a band and running a band is not as easy as one thinks it is, because there's so much to go on. For an example, I'll spend an entire day just trying to redesign my logo, or just trying to get the website up and running properly, or to input the dates, or then get on the phone and start booking some gigs.
It's a business,
right?
It's a business.
Getting my lights to work. I have this incredible light system that we haven't even rolled out yet, because we can't figure out how to work it.
Well, that's all right. But see, you're honest about it. And again, I know you're not going to lay down. You're going to figure out how to get it done. And so many people quit before they're successful in any little thing. And so that's a testament to you guys. It's a business behind the scenes. You want to be on the stage as an entertainer. And what I teach in my show is about business. One of my favorite books, if not my favorite book on business, is The E-Myth. The E-Myth was written by Michael Gerber many years ago, and it's all about what people do when they start a business and how they don't realize they're going to spend 80% of their time, especially in the beginning, doing what they don't like doing in order to get to the point where they can do what they do like doing. For example, you're a rock guy. You want to be on stage playing music. You would love to have somebody handling all that other stuff for you, setting up, taking down, booking the gigs, all that, just so you could go up there and do what you love doing the most. But you also realize I got to do all that other stuff I really don't love doing in order to make that happen.
That's so true. But at the same time, I do enjoy doing it. So, for example, Larry and I are getting older. Larry's my guitar player. And we have to set up the show. We have to load the trailer, bring the gear to the event, roll it out, set it up, plug it in, make sure everything works properly, do a sound check. And now, so we're two guys handling a lot of gear. I mean, we went out and bought a lot of gear over the years. So somebody said to me, well, shouldn't you hire somebody at this point and have them do it? My philosophy is, yeah, of course. I don't want to have to do that before I have to perform. But at the same time, I know I'm going to do it right, and I know I can't really trust anybody with that because I get too nervous.
As a young kid, I think I told you, I used to set up for a guy that was a DJ, and he went under the name Bobby Knight. And it was back when they were still spinning records. I remember two Techniques SLQ2 turntables that I used to help set up, and all the gear and all that to do like the VFW or whatever. And I was just a kid, learn how to do that. And then I got to start setting up and kind of being not a roadie, but a band guy for a local Beatles cover band called The Walrus. And those guys were actually pretty good. And again, we'd set up these venues, and I was learning from guys, 20 years older than me how to do this stuff. But it was really a lot of fun because I'm not a musician, but I do love music, and it was a lot of fun to do that back then. And we got to horse around and do some things that we like to do as young men, being around a band. There were girls, and we're hanging out and getting a beer or whatever. It was a fun way to grow up. And honestly, and it was, we weren't doing anything stupid, but we were having a good time, and I just enjoyed every minute.
So what kind of music were you listening to when you were growing up? First of all, what town are you from?
So I'm originally from Connecticut. I was born in New Britain, Connecticut. I'm sorry, I was born in Hartford, Connecticut. And we lived in New Britain, Bristol, Plainville, Southington, Berlin, all over that central area, just kind of southwest of Hartford. And I was born in 1965, so I'll be 59 years old pretty soon. Went to high school in Plainville. And again, I lived all over that area. And it was a smaller, we had about 18,000 people in that town. But all these surrounding towns, Bristol, Southington, New Britain, those were all larger.
How far were you from Boston?
About 2 hours.
And then New York City?
Almost the same. Yeah,
wow, so
right in the middle of the two.
Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I spent a lot of time going to both. I'm a Red Sox fan and I'm a Giants fan. When you live in Connecticut, you don't have either professional sports team represented, the NFL or the Major League Baseball. And then during my tenure there, we lost the Whalers too. We couldn't even keep an NHL team. So come on, Connecticut, let's get with it. You got plenty of money there, plenty of people, you can support it. But you're right, Boston, New York, in between the two, and enjoyed the sports world as well. But growing up there, it was fun. We got to do a lot of things. I grew up, when it was a big deal to get your license at 16 years old and get your first car and spend all your money on it and lay under it more than you drove it because it was always broken. And, just spending time. We never really had money. We didn't have money to do anything grandiose. So we spent time with each other. And we did it in a way without the phones because we didn't have a phone, right? So we had to interact one-on-one, hang at the donut shop or, talk about the girl you're trying to date or that you think you're going to date or whatever. just horse around, talk about work, all that, aside from whatever job it is we were doing to try to fuel that minute lifestyle that we had. And, I wouldn't change it for all the tea and
Oh,
China.
yeah. I
It
agree
was so
100%.
much fun.
You and I are the same age, and there was that point in our life when we became teenagers and we wanted to drink beer,
Yeah.
but yet we couldn't get into the bars.
No.
So, and we didn't have any money. So what we would do is we would take a pool, maybe buy enough beer, 2 6-packs, and go out to the woods or go out to a golf course
Exactly.
or go over to somebody's house when their parents were not home.
That's right.
And just listen to records.
That's right.
Right? And drink beer.
We had a great field out where our town was. It was a big open field that used to be a farm. And we used to just go hang there and get whatever money together to buy the worst beer ever in a keg. And then we'd go out there, have some beers, and hang out.
And maybe somebody had their car stereo on. So
Yeah,
you had the
absolutely.
tunes
And we
going.
got chased out of there. Cops chased us out a few times. Nobody got arrested. Nobody, it was just a different time, and it was a lot of fun. And we all enjoyed each other. I mean,
It was so good.
we had close relationships, which was great.
I miss the 70s and the early 80s so much.
Me too.
All my friends and their brothers and sisters, just like my brothers and sisters, always had really good vinyl. So there was a lot of records, right?
Yeah.
So whether it was at my house or my friend's house or anyone's house, we would listen to records. We'd pull out vinyl. And I remember always taking a record out, right? You have to really be careful with your hands so you don't get your smudge on the record. So you would hold it like this, put it on the turntable, right? Place your needle down, and then you would quickly grab the record cover and look at the liner notes and sit down on the floor as you're listening to the records.
Yep.
Sometimes if you had headphones, that was pretty cool, right? Because they know.
I had a cleaning kit. We had a cleaning kit for our albums, because everything was vinyl. Everything was, whether it's 45s or large albums, it was just, and you asked me about music. The very first album I bought with my own money was Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon.
Interesting.
And I wore it out.
So it's so funny. Any particular reason why Pink Floyd?
I don't know. The guys I was hanging with at the time, I remember Scotty and Dan and David and Robert, the guys I used to hang out with, they were just good dudes. And they were a little older than me. I was kind of gravitated to people that were a little older. And I graduated at 17. I started school like 3/4 of a year early. I don't know how that happened, but I wasn't 5 yet when I got into kindergarten. I was gonna.
So
be
you were younger, like the youngest kid in your class.
Yeah, I was the youngest kid. I graduated at 17 years old. And so the guys ahead of me were all either 18 or 19. And I would hang out with guys who were upperclassmen as well, including the guys that I had played some sports with back when I was young. I played hockey and stuff like that. And I got to work with those guys as I moved on. Fortunately for me, my father thought it wise to kick my butt out of the house when I was 17, right after I graduated, because him and I were having some to-dos. And I hated him for it at the time and realized it was the smartest thing he ever did.
Sure.
He knew I was going to...
Tough love, right?
Yep, time to move on. And I never went back, and he wasn't going to let me back if I wanted to. And I learned some hard lessons from that carried me to this day. But he got smarter and smarter every day after I got kicked out of the house. No other way for me to explain it to you. He got to be the smartest guy I know. And fortunately, I had him with me till he was 89 in Sarasota. And we spent a lot of time together once I moved to Florida. So we could be together consistently. And Matt, I'll tell you what, I miss him every day. I miss my mother every day. But they were great parents in raising us the right way, kicking us in the ass when we needed it.
Now, do you go back to the Northeast to visit?
I have several times in the last few years. Unfortunately, most of those times were because somebody was ill or someone passed away. I haven't really been able to go back with the exception of a class reunion.
Yeah.
I went to my 40th class
I went to
reunion
mine as well.
last year, 23. And it was a lot of fun. And, it's funny. It's funny to me how when you walk into a room full of people that you went to high school with, some of which you may not have seen since you graduated because they may or may not have come to some of the other reunions, that you can instantly recognize who they are no matter how much they change.
Yes.
Right. And that includes myself. I mean, I don't look anything like I did when I graduated high school. And it's just so funny to me. People go, hey, Scott, hey, like we're wearing name tags, but we could pick each other out. We were a school of about 200 kids in our graduating class, not 600 or 700 like some of these.
Yeah,
big
I was
schools are.
similar situation.
Yeah, so that was fun. And yes, I do go back for that. I love the weather there between Memorial Day and Labor Day, but I don't ever want to see another
I
snow
miss
shovel
the
rest of my
fall,
life.
so I like to go back in October. And I'm from Westchester County, where there's a lot of trees and there's a lot of leaves on the ground. And I remember driving around the Hutchinson River Parkway into the Merritt Parkway and whipping through all the leaves, right? And it's nice and cold out and full moon, right? And it's around Halloween time.
Westchester guy, huh? Aristocrat.
Yeah. So I go back to my old school and I see my buddies, and we don't miss a beat. And it's incredible because some of those guys I speak to all the time on the phone or through the text or Facebook. But there's some guys that I hadn't seen in legitimately 20, 30 years. But the minute you saw them and you would, go up to them and shake their hand and have a beer, it was like the conversation was like you're back in homeroom.
It's
It was
amazing.
incredible, man.
Yeah, it's amazing how people can, from all different backgrounds, walks of life, and so on, assimilate with each other again. And it was what happened in our reunion. Some people were like, are you, that kind of, there was a little bit of that. But for the most part, we all got back in the same routine, gagging on each other, bagging at each other like we used to. Telling the girls they were good looking, whether they were or whether they weren't, and same with me, what I mean? I mean, just, they can say, oh, Scott, you look great. Come on. I look like hell tonight. I mean, partying for 2 days. But.
You know what we did? So we made sure the music at the event was all from the early 80s, right? Because
Yes.
we graduated in 83 as well.
Yes.
So we had the soundtrack on. So as we were all socializing, and it was an all-boys Catholic high school, we were playing, all that fun music. And then the girls, across the street from us, there was an all-girls school. So after about maybe 2 hours of our party being just the guys from 83, the girls from 83 came. They were invited. They came in, and it was fantastic catching up with them too.
That's hilarious. And, think about how much more pressure can you put on young people than to separate them by men and women across the street from each other. And think that's going to end up badly no matter what you do.
It was funny because I dated, obviously, I was pretty much the class clown of my group, as you can imagine. And I dated a woman who was quite popular of her group. So the two of us joined forces by dating, and then all of a sudden her friends and my friends started getting to know each other. So, and the cool thing about it today is that I've learned that a lot of these women have daughters now who are going to that same school.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And some of my guy friends have sons now that are going to that same all-boys school. So, it continues. Like a lot of people stayed in Westchester, and they married in Westchester, raised a family in Westchester. So now their kids are experiencing the same thing that they did,
Well, my parents, I think they tried to straighten me out a little bit. In 7th and 8th grade, they sent me to an all-Catholic junior high. And it was boys and girls, but it was Catholic. And I was an altar boy when I was younger and all that stuff. Like, did the whole thing through the Catholic ritual, which is fine. I mean, I'm not a big religious person anymore, but I understand the structure of it. And then I followed up by going to 1 year of Catholic high school. And that's where the line started busting up for me. Like, it was no longer fun for me anymore. And that's probably part of the reason I was having such a tough time with my dad, because he was trying to force me into more structure and getting my act together. And I was bucking the system. So he figured, well, you can't beat him, join him, let the kid finish out the last 3 years in the public high school, and then kick him out of the house. And that's exactly what he did. And it, like I said, it worked out famously. But I understand the reasons now, and I went through.
So you had a wonderful upbringing, right?
I did.
So now when you have children,
when I needed to get my ass kicked, I got my ass kicked.
well, yeah,
And
me
I
as well.
mean this sincerely, guys. The part of the problem that's going on, and we even experience it with our own kids, they've never heard the word no. They've never heard the word wait, right? You can't raise a child that way. You can't raise an animal that way, right? They have to understand boundaries. And then it becomes, now I can't teach the boundaries to an adult. And that's when you really are running off the rails. And I think a lot of it, kids don't know enough, I don't want to call it pain. They don't know enough hardship or work to get to the level of being an adult without coming unglued when a little thing happens. Oh my God, I lost my job, or I can't find a job, or, I don't have money for my bills. Well, figure it out. But if they don't have that inner will to do that and have not been trained by their parents not to whine when something bad happens, but to look it in the face and go right at it, it makes it difficult for them. And I feel bad for them. I really feel bad. If you're raised that way, you don't know anything else. So all you can do is try to work with what you've been told or try to break out, and that's hard to do.
I know, but the fact that you're conscious of it and you're practicing that,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of parents probably are not, right?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to bag on anybody else. Listen, you do what you got to do with your own family. I'm not here to tell people what to do. I would just tell you that it's pretty easy to sit back and watch what something else is going wrong rather than see it in yourself. And when you can see a lot of families breaking down or kids they're trying too hard to be their friends, and you must be their parent first. You'll
Correct.
become their friend later, like
Correct.
my father
Like the
did
tough
with me.
love we talked
Correct.
about. You know what's funny? I'm a big fan of being raised in the Northeast, and I think kids are at a disadvantage that don't have that experience. So I was going to ask you about raising children in Florida, right? Because if kids grow up here, and, to me, this is really not a great place to grow up. It's a great place to retire. Mm-hmm. And I know that in the Northeast, we were exposed to so much at a young age. I mean, even as little children, in elementary school, you would get on a bus and you'd do a class trip and you'd go to the opera and you'd be exposed to that.
Right.
Your mother had to sign the permission slip, right?
Right.
And then all the kids went and we sat there and we went to our first opera. Being exposed to the museums and to all the cultures, right?
Yes.
That to me is so important.
It was. And we, again,
And kids are missing out. I think kids today are missing out by not having that experience.
I remember 8th grade when we were in Catholic junior high, the 8th graders, before you graduate, go on a class trip. And at that time it was to DC, and buses going to DC. And, we grew up, New Britain, Hartford, some areas that you had to be careful where you were and what you're doing. Keep your wits about you, because there's rough and tough, and you just could fall into the wrong element anytime, especially as a child. Go to DC. DC is a serious city. I mean, you got to be watching. You got to make sure your money's where it needs to be. You got to be paying attention to where you are, especially as a child. Now, of course, we're 50 kids going down there with a bunch of nuns and whatever, so we're pretty well protected. But we went to some city areas that were pretty rough, like not what we had used to growing up. And again, eye-opening. We did it as a group, though. We did it, and that's part of that. We had these experiences as kids together, and it shapes you. It does, and it's part of your beginnings. I mean, you gotta. And you're right. My kids went from the Northeast, and then we moved to the Midwest in 2008, and we lived out in Kansas. Now, huge difference between.
Really?
Oh yeah, we lived in Overland Park, which was a suburb.
So how far were you from Kansas City?
Oh, right there. So our Overland Park, Leawood, Shawnee Mission, Lenexa is just on the Kansas side of Kansas City. And then Missouri is the other half of Kansas City, right? So we were about 15, 20, 30 minutes, depending on which way you wanted to go, to getting into Kansas City proper in Missouri. And I worked right off the highway there. And I was offered a really nice corporate job, so that's the reason we moved lock, stock, and barrel out there. And the kids were there for 5 of their formidable years, because my son was 8 at the time, my daughter was 6. And they went to some good schools and all that. And, here's experience again. My son, great, and I'll talk great about it, because we moved 3 different times, right, in that time period between Connecticut and Florida. And during that time, he was going to school. Well, challenge, when you're bouncing from place to place, sometimes hard to get back in the game. So we came into Sarasota. He was having some challenges, catching on with school. And I said to my wife, we should hold him back. And, public school doesn't want you to do that. But if you're private school, you can go in any grade you want. Start me wherever you want to be, right? So we put him in the Sarasota Christian School for 1 year. And we held him back in the same grade that he was in the year before, because we'd moved. And I'll tell you, it's the best thing. There's a book
very
called
wise.
The Outliers.
Very wise.
Yeah, there's a book called The Outliers of kids that graduate later in life rather than earlier. How, especially if they've been held back somewhere along the line and offered the chance to reset. My kid's got a business now, and not because he's my son. He's just doing wildly successful.
He's a go-getter.
He's 24 years old.
Yes.
He's ahead of where his father is.
No, there's no doubt.
Now.
You did a great job with him.
Yeah, and I credit a lot of that to that decision that my wife and I made.
But also, don't sell yourself short in the sense that he saw your work ethic, right? And he saw that you got up early, no matter how sick you were, what the weather was like. You got up and you went to work and you had to provide.
Yeah.
So I think we underestimate the fact that nature, where a small person looks at an adult and sees and emulates them.
Yes.
And it could even be their workout, their diet, their choice of music.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, and you're right about all that. And I think it was the combination of that and the fact that we could see that he was struggling, and all it would take is pushing the reset button. It wasn't that he had any challenges learning. It was that he was in 3 different places trying to catch on to 3 different learning styles in a very important time of his life, getting into that middle school time. And where my daughter was younger and didn't have quite the same experience, he did. And it's the best thing we ever did. And again, so he's 1 year older than his contemporaries, but look how many years ahead of them he is now because of what he did and put the work into it. A lot of kids his age are still, they don't know what they're doing. They're still just got out of school. They might be working a waitress job or a waiter job, doing whatever it is, and that's fine. Good for a 24-year-old kid. This kid's got an online business, and he's growing a team, and he's got a location already. And I'm like, I'm still mesmerized by what's happened just in the last year with him in that business. And he calls me for advice all the time. Hey, Dad, what about this? Hey, and that's really the majority of the calls I get from him right now, because he's in the middle of it. He's working hard. He's got a girl, like the whole deal. But he calls me for advice, and then every once in a while, hey, Dad, thanks.
That's
I
great.
love you. And but he more than often he'll call, hey, I got an issue with this. Hey, how do I handle this? What do I do with this contract? And I'm like, he's 24. 24, I still have my head in my ass. I think I didn't get it out of it. Well, I might. What time is it? I didn't get it. I haven't gotten out of there yet. So
there'll come a day when you'll be asking him for advice.
Yeah, I'm so proud of him. And my daughter is about to go into school. She wants to go into esthetician and laser technology and all that stuff with like a med spa kind of thing, or a med place. And she's a bright kid, very creative, and she'll do well.
Yeah,
and
I met your daughter recently a couple times.
Yeah, she's a good kid.
Yeah.
Good kid. So the both.
You have a great family, dude. You
very proud of
have a very solid family.
Well, and let's not forget the mother. she came from a Sicilian background, and bag on them what you want. They're very, very passionate people.
The Sicilians.
So much so. I mean, there's
As
so much
opposed
family.
to somebody from a different part of Italy.
Yeah, I mean,
Like, is there a difference? Can
they
you
tease each
tell Sicilians are different than, say, people from the Rome area?
For me, I'd say no. But you ask an Italian person or a Sicilian person if they're different from each other, and they'll all say, not just are they Northern or Southern Italian, just different regions. Oh, I'm from Bologna. I'm from
Well, certainly the food.
Naples.
We know the food could be different in the north. versus
Absolutely. Milan, I mean, Rome, they do all these different things, and they all want to be the best at it, and they all want to be the ones who, but that drives them. That drives them to improve the cooking, to improve their quality of life, to improve the products that they make, and certainly in family. Like, family is the key. Not that our families weren't warm, but we came from a colder background, kind of a more, I would call it like a realist.
You were raised in a household that was half Italian?
No, I'm not Italian. My mother was 100% French.
Okay.
My father was half French and half Czechoslovakian.
Gotcha.
So so I was 75% French and 25% Czechoslovakian. My father would call it.
Because it's so funny, because I think of you as Italian because of your wife.
I know.
And her side of the family.
I know. She keeps telling me she melded that over to me, over the last 35 years we've been together. But yeah, I was 75-25. My father used to call us canceled checks because we were 75% French.
Now, talk about growing up in an Italian household or with Italian influences where the food comes
totally
first,
different.
right? So, like, my mother was a wonderful, wonderful cook, and she taught my sisters how to cook and how to bake and all that stuff. So when we were growing up, there was always a big Sunday dinner.
Oh, yeah.
And even during the week, my mother would make some pretty elaborate dinners, because there were 4 kids and so there were 6 of us. But my mother was very big about, back then, it was pasta, bread, potato, like all those heavy starchy
starches,
carbs.
yeah.
We ate all that stuff.
And as a kid, you can eat pounds of that, and it's fine because
Right.
you move. Especially in those days, you and I were talking about the other day. We were always moving. We were never sedentary as kids. We were on our bikes. We were running across town. We were horsing around. We were working on our cars. We were playing sports. We were always moving. So you could ingest all that stuff and not run out of. You had gas, meaning energy, and you weren't
Fuel.
And you weren't overweight or obese in any way because you were constantly moving. The more sedentary you get, especially as a young person, it's very difficult to transition back into getting into shape, and your body's not used to it as well. In my belief, I'm not a doctor. I just play one on TV. But, no, but I think it was different for me because my mother was not really the cook; she was the baker. My father was more the cook, and he was a meat and potatoes kind of guy. I think he ate bacon or sausage in one out of every 3 meals of his life. Probably which ended up giving a bypass at 61 or 62 years old. But he lived till he was 89 years old, so he did it his way. At the end of the day, we would eat, talk for a second. My mother was a super clean freak. Everything would be in the dishwasher, clean and put away within an hour.
Yeah, right.
My wife's family, it's an experience. So the first time I went over to have dinner with her at her grandfather's house, it was a 4-hour production of people that were all Italian except for myself. And they're all Sicilian. Full 100%
So like
Sicilian.
they were like kind of interviewing you at the same time without formally and doing it, like kind of seeing, okay, here's Sally's new boyfriend.
Right.
Let's see who he is, what he's all about.
Well, and the grandfather didn't want you bringing everybody you dated to the house. So that was a special treat for me to be allowed to go there, especially
Right.
then.
So you got pre-qualified.
We got pre-qualified to get in. He was very nice to me. Didn't speak much English, but everybody's Sicilian except for me. I tell my wife this story. I walk in the front door of the house, and she starts introducing me to her family. Here's my grandfather Sebastiano, my grandmother Marie, my aunt Domenica, my uncle Alfredo, my uncle Gaetano. This is Alessandro. This is Giorgio. I'm going down the list. Stefania, right? It gets to me, and this is Scott. Which one doesn't fit in this sentence, right? I don't have enough.
Who's a
vowels.
French guy? Who's a Czechoslovakian?
And why is he named Scott? Yeah. But we had a great, and the funny thing is, I didn't know at the time they were all holding back initially from being loud. And if you've grown up around Sicilian families, they're loud. I mean, it's not loud a little bit. It's loud like you think they're screaming, and they're not.
Yes,
Because I grew up in a kind of a quiet environment when we were eating.
Well, some of the New York Italians, that maybe they're not from Sicily, but they're nonetheless they're Italian, and
the hands are flying,
right, and
Yeah,
maybe a few
it's just-
F-bombs are being dropped,
Oh, absolutely.
right, and everybody's in everybody's business,
Yes. Yes. No, it was. By the end of the dinner, there were 7 arguments going on at the
Right.
table, and I looked over her uncle Gaetano, who was actually living in New York at the time. He was an adult, and I looked at him. I said, "Gaetano, are they serious?" And he goes, "Oh yeah." He goes, "You're here. They're being much better." And I go, "Come on." He goes, "No, seriously,
Sure.
they're being much better because you're here." But I got used to it, and you realize it's a loving thing. They really like my wife has a big thing in our kitchen that says, food is family.
Yes.
Right. Your
There's no doubt. It's love. Food is love.
All of it. And,
You know?
and her mother.
And the
her mother will
Italians-
never let us go to her house or come out of it without something.
The Italians are always bringing things over people's houses.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just the way we are.
They're always, making sure there's multiple courses of food.
Yes.
You'll
never go out of there hungry.
You can't get up. If you ever try to say to an Italian woman that you're on a diet and you're watching your carbs, they don't understand that.
No, here's the funny way. Here's even better, Kurt. Because I'm not as thin as I once was. I was in much better shape when I was younger. And you go into, hey, it looks like you're putting on a few pounds. And I go, oh, thanks very much. And then they go, have something to eat. And I go, you just told me I'm fat. Now you want to feed me? No, you got to eat. I mean, you're already here. You're already fat. You might as well eat. It's hilarious. I just get such a kick out of it. It goes against all common sense, which is just fine.
But the other aspect of those big meals is I think that your personality comes out. Like as a child, being around the table, right, and being the youngest, I was expected to entertain everybody, right?
I could see
so
that.
during the course of the meal, after the meal, it wasn't uncommon for us to play records and dance, and I would get up and tell jokes. I had a little microphone thing that I can sing into that people can hear it, like a little speaker. So I became that guy, because I was the young, cute one, and everybody enjoyed me entertaining, whether it was family or even had company over. So as I got older in life, and now people say, well, you're a salesman, you're an entertainer, right? You're a very outgoing, personable guy. That's all was developed around at that dinner table in those formidable years, right? When you're in elementary school, and you're learning. Like I enjoyed the center of attention, and I enjoyed making people laugh.
Well, they say that people today, the vast majority of people fear public speaking more than death. They don't want to get up in front of a group of people. And when we were in high school, the plays, the musicals, whatever, people would do to entertain, you'd have 90% of the kids sitting there going, I would never do this.
True. You're right.
10% who want to do it. And that's why you ended up where you are. We have similar things in that. I wasn't, again, I'm not a musician, and I probably should have taken up an instrument. But
Although you do sing very, very well.
Have fun with it. Here's one of the things, too. If you talk about kind of the grow up, after I'm booted, I'm living on my own for many years, and I get a job as a bartender in a place called Starstruck in Connecticut. And it was at the time that karaoke got to be the big thing. Late 80s, right around 1990, karaoke was blowing up. Every place wanted to have karaoke. And this guy, Graham Nicholson, I'll never forget him, was the guy that bought this place and turned it into a 100% karaoke bar. Karaoke in the front, karaoke in the back, 2 bars, front and back. And on the weekends, that place was a shithole. It was a terrible facility, but it was a great place to hang out. And I was a bartender there for about 2 years. I started in the service bar, schlepping the drinks for everybody that was waiter or waitress, not being able to get to the big bar. And then eventually I got a shot at the big bar. And that was some of the most fun you could have with your pants on. It was just so much fun. And I met my wife around that time, so we started a date. And I just remember, first of all, every genre of music was played in a karaoke bar. I used to do a lot of rap. I did, Funky Cole Medina.
Come on, really?
Songs of the I'm like,
Scotty D the rapper?
Oh, yeah. I just, I can throw a little bit for you if you like right now.
We'll do that after the show.
Okay, sounds great. But I love doing it. It was a lot of fun. And like I said, every genre of music was played. People you didn't expect having amazing voices would come in there. I'd see some tiny little person, come in, a young lady or a young guy, or even an older person come in. Like you're looking at them, oh, and then they get on the stage and they just wail. Like you can't believe this voice is coming out of this person. And others who look like they're star entertainers, their voice couldn't hit the right note if they paid, but they got up there. They tried, and I would clap for anyone that stepped on that stage and sang, because that's what you do. Why not? Right? They're trying, and they're loving what they're up there. They got the microphone in their hand. They're playing their favorite song. The words are in front of them. They're having a blast.
And if you suck, it's okay, right?
It's okay.
You know what I'm saying? You're
That's
having
the
fun.
worst going to happen to you.
Yeah. But you ever go to a karaoke bar and some people take it really seriously?
Yes.
And they'll actually memorize the lyrics, so they won't even have to look at the board, and they'll just,
Yes.
that's their 15 seconds, right? That's
the songs that I would sing, whether it was the stuff that I was saying with you guys or the rap stuff I was telling you about, I memorized it too. So I'd sang it so many times, and I would do the same songs. In fact, because I was working there a lot of times, hey Scott, do Funky Cole Medina, because I wrote the raps in between the song itself to do it myself, and it was fun, man. I enjoyed that. That was a lot of entertainment value.
I can imagine. Wouldn't it be great to go back in time and to go back there again and to see yourself doing it all.
Yeah, and I wish we had more video of that. I remember before I got married to my wife, I was dating a young lady, and we lived together for a couple years. And we'd gone down to Disney, and it's when they had, you could go into a studio and videotape
Yes.
doing a song. I was 260 pounds at the time.
Really?
I got way out of control. And I'm standing up there. I got these big white shorts on, this big white T-shirt. I've got this mustache, and I'm singing "Cult of Personality" from Living Color, right? And you're gonna laugh. So these people are outside. I have 4 black folks are outside with me, right? Two black couples, older, probably in their 30s, and they were standing outside waiting to get into the Disney thing as well. And I go, guys, you wouldn't want to be my backup band, right? And they're like, what are you gonna sing? And I said, "Cult of Personality" from Living Color. Absolutely. So 2 couples, they're together on vacation. They got behind me. I look like an idiot. Like I'm this big fat dude with this.
I know, but rappers are usually big and fat, though.
You're right, but I'm not dressed as a rapper. I'm dressed as some clown.
With that Mickey Mouse shirt
on. Just at the beach or something. And these 4 they were the nicest people. And we videotaped this. I had so many people breaking my chops after this. Look at what are you doing? And these people had a great time. I'll have to show. It's on VHS somewhere in my house. And I think they called it Starstruck. I think they called that whole thing Starstruck.
I think you're right.
And I did a couple songs doing it that way, and it was always interesting.
It was like the beginning of American Idol, right?
Yes.
In some way.
Yes. And they were laughing at me. Like they got behind me and they're laughing. And we get out afterward, after I did the taping, and they're like, dude, that was so much fun. And I'm like, thank you so much for doing that, because I can't imagine what it would have looked like me just standing there doing this. But when they're in the back, they give them prop guitars and keyboards and stuff, and they look like they were really playing the song. And they knew the song. It was so popular at that time. And that was just
so. At what point did you start performing with a band on stage?
So when we got to the end of the 90s, early 2000s, I had met a guy named Ralph Giansani, and Ralphie owned a financial planning company, a brokerage up in Connecticut. He had a bunch of people working for him, and he was, he had major athletes he was planning for, like guys like that. I don't want to mention their names, but I met some of the major athletes he was doing the financial planning for, and his passion was drumming, and he was a very good drummer. So as a gig, he just put together about 5 or 6 people that he knew, and bass player, a couple guitar guys, one guy did, keyboards or what have you. And every once in a while they would get together and just play and jam. So then he got the idea to start doing gigs, but none of them really liked singing. Not that they couldn't sing, they didn't really like singing. And they did like ZZ Top and Robin Trower and Steve Miller and that kind of stuff. And I had a voice for that because my voice is low and kind of gravelly.
You have a bluesy kind of voice to you.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to hit any high notes or do anything with major range.
You know your range, correct?
I know my range.
You're right.
But and we didn't have to be good. We just playing a horse around. So at that time, one of the locations we owned was a warehouse, and we would have so many people, would come during the day, but at night we'd shut it down, and these guys would come with their instruments, set it up in the warehouse, and we'd play. And we did that probably for 3 or 4 months, and then Ralphie said, I'm gonna start getting us some gigs. So he was getting us booked at different places to do live gigs. So did that for a little while. It wasn't serious. It wasn't about money. It was just to have fun. And then of course I moved away from Connecticut. And about 3 or 4 days ago, when I was with you guys and I'd sang a song on stage, my wife had, videotaped a clip of it. I sent it to Ralph, and Ralph says, "You got to be kidding me! WTF? What's going on down there in Florida?" And I say, "Hey man, come down. My buddy's the leader of the band. He's got great chops on the drums. If you ever come here and visit him, I'm sure he'd let you sit in and bang the bongos."
That's awesome.
Song or something. So that's kind of how that.
You know what's great about living down here? There's so much live music, right?
Oh.
And there's so many opportunities to hear music.
It's great because there's a lot of venues, like some of the ones you play at, that have music 7 days a week. And that's really refreshing. In fact, I can remember, very fondly my parents, even into their 80s, going out and going to see where there was live music. My father would drag my mother to any place. Like if he found some dive in any place, a place maybe even you would never walk into, the old man would walk in. He was fearless about that stuff. And then within 20 minutes, they were the hit of the party because people that age weren't hanging out, going to watch live music. They were sometimes not even able to get out of their houses. But these two acted like they were much younger, even well into their 80s. In fact, both of them really didn't come off of that till within a year or so before they passed away. And I'm very fortunate to be able to say that because not everybody's that lucky. It was to the point where we could hang out with them and have as much fun with them being in their mid 80s as we did with our contemporaries, which is rare. So, but I was exposed to all that. And my father, he liked to sing. He liked to listen to music a lot. And when we were kids, we had one of those big ass stereos that was, 6.5 feet long.
Was it like a suitcase where you took the speaker off and put it over here?
No, this was
you
one
take the other
big
one?
console, and you had the lid in the middle.
Oh,
with
okay,
the
like in the living room.
turntable.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. And he would set up a reel-to-reel besides that would
Wow.
pump through that. And they used to play all different types of music.
RCA used to make those consoles, right? They were huge,
Yes.
and they were very heavy.
Yes.
And God forbid you
It
had
wasn't
to,
RCA.
God forbid you had to move one of them.
I moved it multiple times before they passed away into all the houses. And then when they finally got down here in Florida, the place they moved it to, it wasn't the right fit for it, so we sold it. But I still have the reel-to-reel.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, really on the reel-to-reel. Now, I wouldn't even know how to use it, let alone how to. I mean, is there music like in the old days? I know you had the 8-track, right?
Yes.
And you had obviously the cassette, the record. But people play music on the reel-to-reels? That you bought recordings
in the early 70s to the mid and late 70s, yes. My father had that reel-to-reel for a long time. He had a lot of different music on it, and it was everything from Harry Chapin.
That's a thicker tape.
It's a thicker tape,
Yeah.
And I could even show it to you. Like I said, I've still got it. I don't know why I kept it because I'm never going to use it.
Yeah, well, it's nostalgic.
But it's nostalgic, yeah.
And it might make for a good piece, like in your living room, like a nice little.
And our video projector, same thing. It was that old tape, that old 8mm tape,
No
or whatever
kidding.
it was.
Wow.
I mean, they took video on those machines back in those
Wow.
days. They didn't have digital anything. And I still got a couple of those pieces. I still got that equipment. I don't have the stereo system that they had, again, huge. But they play the Moody Blues, Harry Chapin, the Beatles, I listen to everything.
So your parents had music collection? They collected music?
A lot of albums.
And did you inherit that?
I did. I got a lot of their albums, stuff that's in storage that's still there. Even my albums are in storage.
I would love to see some of that stuff.
I'd love to show them to you.
Stuff from the 60s and 70s?
Kurt, I literally have too much crap that I've hauled all over the country for whatever reason. But there's some things you just don't want to let go. And those are, those VHS tapes, those cassette tapes, the reel-to-reels and all that.
Well, that's why here in Florida, there's storage lockers on every corner because they know people are coming down from the north and they can't fit everything into their new, townhomes or condos, so they have to put it in their storage.
Well,
and the records
with
go
my
in
real
there.
business, we have a couple of buildings that we need for our business, and I've got some storage areas in there for that. But I got if I ever had to condense it all into my home, I can't do it. So I've got to pare some of that stuff down. But some of those items that you just mentioned are going to be the most.
Have you ever considered going in there and pulling them out and just dusting them off?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In fact, we're about to do that. We've been retooling some of our stuff within the business right now and resetting up for what we're going to do differently as we move forward because, the businesses are always changing and the environment changes. And I'm going to take the opportunity to purge some stuff that I know I can get rid of and make sure I keep the things that I don't.
Well, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, I want to talk about your businesses.
Beautiful. I love it.
All right. We'll see you in a bit. Back with Scott D Perron, a.k.a. Scotty D.
That's right.
True or false, in the city that you were born in, there's actually a statue of you in a park.
That's false. Unless they erected it after I left.
Perhaps the mayor gave you the key to the city.
Yeah, I think they probably all clapped as I was leaving. They saw the plane leaving and they were just,
And then when they have their annual parade, you're the marshal. You come back.
I'm probably the guy picking up after the horses.
So, Scott, you're a very successful guy in a lot of different ways. Let's talk a little bit about your business, your current business, and what you're currently doing.
So our business, my whole life, I spent pretty much in the floor covering business. My father had started just by accident, a carpet store in Connecticut in 1971 that he called, believe it or not, the Shag Barn. And back then you could get away with that. Today you probably can't say it's not PC. But they were selling shag carpet. And it was a small mom and pop. He taught me the ropes, but he learned it himself from the ground up with no experience. Like, imagine a guy in 1971, he was almost 40, right? And had no experience in floor covering. So he started the business. They, ramped it up to where it became a living, but it was a 5-car garage behind our 2-family home that we lived in that he converted to an 800 square foot store. And in a small town like we grew up in, he knew everybody. My father was an amazing athlete when he was young, a captain of the track and football team for his sophomore, junior, and senior year. So really star athlete, but he got drafted, went over to Korea, fought for this country for a couple of years, came back. His mom was ill, and he had an offer to go to school for free and couldn't take it because he stayed home to take care of his mother. His father had already died, and he didn't marry my mother for the 7 or 10 years that they went together because his mom was alive. So
Wow.
he had to take, and kudos to that and to my mom for allowing him
Patience.
to do that. Patience, but they were together for a really
Like,
long
so
time.
the mother comes before the new wife,
Correct.
and in most cultures, I guess, back then.
Correct. Took care of his mom, did the right thing. He was youngest of 7 boys, the 12th of 13 kids. They were not wealthy family, but they were very tight. And you messed with one, you were getting the other 12 on your back. So that was a good thing. Very tight family. So coming up, he learned that, taught me the ropes because he was learning it as I was a kid. And then eventually I got into, I started as a warehouse guy. I did installation helper, learned a valuable lesson there because those guys work really hard. That's one of the toughest jobs in the world, is to be a flooring installer, but they're really good at it. And they can make a really great living, especially today, if they want to get into that. So kids, if you want to work with your hands, I highly recommend you look in that business. And then it became management, sales, management. Failed a few times. And then finally, the end of 1999, early 2000s, we had 2 locations that we had opened. My parents had retired to Florida, 10 years or so before that. I'd started one store, then we got to another one, doing kind of different types of clients. So one was full service, one was more cash and carry. Then we did builder, multifamily, and commercial. So we separated these 3 entities, and things were going good. And we were making more money in those days than I thought I would back in that time, and trying to reinvest in the company. And then one of the companies that I did have was a franchise, and they offered me the position to be their president. And that's why I relocated to Kansas City. In that 5 years, I learned more valuable lessons, kind of seeing the other side of the curtain. And all that really prepared me for getting to Florida, hitting the reset button once again, and starting a new family of companies, which we have now. So very fortunate. Listen, hard work and all that stuff, yes. A little bit of luck along the way, a little bit of good timing, lots of hard work, and a great team. My wife works with me. I've got a great team of people that work with us, great installation teams.
And the name of your business is?
We have Floors for Pros, which is the number 4. Floors for Pros, which is our pro side, selling materials only. We have 24/7 floors, which is our full service side. So if you need labor done as well as the materials, 24/7 does the job. If you want to buy just the goods, cash and carry, Floors for Pros job, it does it. And you can see why that's the kind of the meld of what I learned over these many years. And I just love teaching business to people because I made every mistake possible, screwed everything up. But then eventually, if you start paying attention and listening to the right mentors, you get to the right place. And I started really listening, paying attention to guys that were much smarter than me. And during my stint in the Midwest, I met 2 young men, Mitch and Russell, who taught me some really valuable lessons later in my life that I've taken with me to this point. And it's what's made us successful. Now we're at a point where, the business is running great. We've made some proper investments. It's not about money anymore. And it's not to say we're ultra rich or anything like that, but that's not our focus. Now our focus on making it better, growing a better team, teaching our people, training them to do better, getting them the best possibilities, and looking at the way the market's changing. So to make sure we can adapt with it, because, as things change, you need to change. Otherwise 10 years from now, you'll be behind the curve and not able to catch up. Throughout this process, I wanted to get back into something I'd started in the Midwest, which was a mentoring show about business called Getting Down to Business. And that's how you and I met.
Correct.
Well, we didn't meet that way, but
I was a guest.
you were a guest because
twice,
we had met
actually.
prior. Yeah, twice, and you're going to be.
And one of them's the highest rated show that you've
It
that you've had.
absolutely is. It absolutely is, and for good reason. But it's a labor of love. It's not about money for that either. It's about me paying forward what we learned, my wife and I, my team, my kids, everything that's all culminated to who I am today. And really, genuinely, I speak my mind, as you can tell. When I don't lie about anything. Whatever I say to you is exactly the way it happened, or I won't tell you that. But at the end of the day, I want to pay that forward to people who can benefit from it. And I love teaching business. So that's what got me to this point. And I'm excited for you. This podcast is really cool. I like what you're doing here.
Oh, I love it. So what's the future for you? I mean, are you going to sell your business, and then what would you do after that?
Eventually you're going to sell it, because ultimately the whole goal, if anybody who's out there, the very first thing you should be thinking of after putting your business together and getting off the ground is, what's it going to look like when you leave it?
Your exit strategy.
What's your exit? Right. your exit is, am I selling it? Am I turning it over to my kids? Am I going to make it a ESOP? I mean, what am I going to do? And that's important because otherwise you don't have a goal. Like what's the finish line, you know? And it's part of the reason I recommend the E-Myth so strongly to everybody who's going to start a business and someone who's even been in business and maybe someone who's even been in business 20 years to say, holy mackerel, I didn't know this stuff, because it's one of the most well-written books that's easy to read, that anybody can understand the concept of what's written there. And essentially it's all about what I said, people understanding that you are going to spend 80% of your time doing the things you don't like in order to get to that golden goose, you know, what you really want to be doing. And so that's why I decided to do the show. And it's my pleasure to do it because I learned all these things from all these people, whether it was, you know, my buddy Brad, my buddy Russell, Mitch, Lee, trying to think of down the list, Gene, Big Bob himself, the guy that I worked with in Kansas. Big Bob's a great mentor. Just one of those guys, not taking any guff, but he'll give you all the pat on the back you deserve. He'll also push you to do better. You know, you never have gotten to the end of what you're capable of. Don't ever think that. There's always another thing you can reach for and attain if you really believe it and you really want it. And that's not a speech, it's true. But if you don't want to get off the couch, if you're waiting for something to come to you, instead of going out there and getting it or making it happen, and that's how I end my show every week, make something good happen. That's my last line in my show every week.
That's a great line.
And I mean it. Make something good happen. Because what is your choice? Make something bad happen? Do nothing? Right? Blame other people? None of it works.
I need to come up with a good tagline. My friend Jack McKissock, Jack Trash.
Yeah.
His closing line on his show is "Live your life to 11."
Yeah, and
how
what
great
does
is
it
that?
mean?
How good is that?
What does it mean?
That means go extra, go above,
one past
because
the
you know
10.
most things go to 10 now. It's a Spinal Tap reference, and that it was a movie about how this guy's amps went to 11, which was a spoof. They really go to 10. So the guy would say, "Well, why don't you just keep it at 10, make that much one louder?" And he's like, "No, these go to 11." So, and the British accent, of course.
Terrific.
But so, what are some of your hobbies and interests when you're not working or you're not doing your stuff with your family?
Yeah, aside from, and listen, I have been spending more time with my wife together since we moved to Florida than I ever spent with her prior, because, you know, when your kids are young, you got a lot going on. She had her own business. She was in cosmetology, hair replacement. Like, she did a very specialized field of work that she grew up doing when we were dating, and then came in the business with me. So now the kids are older, they're gone, they're doing their thing. Her and I are together. We work together, we live together, we eat together, we sleep together sometimes. You know, we have a lot of fun together, and it's just, it's a great place to be in your life right now. And we have plenty of energy. Have to be thankful for the fact we're not sick. You know, we haven't had any of these major tragedies that people have. So you got to really be happy about that, in my opinion. And just a great day for me is the day I swing my legs out of the bed and it hits the floor and I'm ready to stand up.
Now, you're a motorcycle enthusiast.
Mm-hmm.
You have a pilot's license.
A pilot's license. I got my pilot's license in 1990 at General Aviation, flying Cessnas, and now I fly Diamond and Beechcrafts and other planes. That's fun. And when I was dating my wife, that was cool, and she wanted to be with me, right? She would fly with me. Well, then the kids come and they get nervous about everything. So I took a lot of time off not flying. Got recently back into it and flying a lot out of Sarasota here. I put probably 30 hours in just in the last 3 months. Flying all different types of aircraft, getting back into it, understanding the technology.
And what's neat is that when you go to Orlando to visit your son, you're not dealing with Route 4.
Oh,
you're
man.
Flying above it.
I love telling that story because, you know, if you go to I-4, no matter when you're going, what time of day, unless it's 3 a.m, and even then you're probably going to run
I got
into
stuck
an
at 3
accident.
a.m. once.
Oh, it'll be an accident
Yeah.
and the whole thing's jammed up. Nothing's better than flying over I-4 to get to where my son lives and back. I fly over to Orlando Executive Airport, you know, land, and I pull up to the hangar, you know, at Shelter or whatever, and there's all these G650s and, you know, Citation 3s, and I'm pulling in, you know, a little Diamond 4-seater.
Are you able to play music in the plane?
You can, yeah, you can actually pump it through the sound system. Everything has been upgraded now.
So you can listen to "Kickstart My Heart" by Motley Crue as you take
can,
off?
as you're listening to air traffic control. And, yeah. So, and then I'm a golfer also. I haven't played as much golf these last couple of years as I like, but I live at a golf course. And actually, Jack Trash, I understand, is a golfer.
Very good golfer.
And we talked the other day after meeting him at the concert, and I'm going to get him on the golf course with us.
Yeah,
at
he's a
some
great
point.
guy.
Introduce him to my
You know, it's
son.
so funny because Jack and I were very, very close, and I hadn't seen Jack in a long time. So that concert was a chance for him and I to catch up.
He's a good dude. I had a great time with him and with Larry. We had a blast, and with Brittany, and her boyfriend's name is
Chris.
That was a great day. Meeting Jack was cool. I talked to him about golf afterwards. My son's in the golf business, and I'll definitely want to get him.
Get him on your show.
In that play. Yeah, he's agreed to come on. He'd love to, and then we can talk about music, golf, rock and roll.
Now, how can people find your radio show?
They can go online to Spotify. It's called Getting Down to Business with Scott, the middle initial D, Perron. So Getting Down to Business with Scott D Perron. I have a Spotify channel. Right now I've got about 30 shows or 35 shows that I've uploaded to Spotify. And they're basically 1-hour podcasts that I record at a radio station. And eventually I'm going to do this really inspired me because I'd like to do the video part of it only because it seems like that's what people want more of. They will listen to audio podcasts, but they want to see video. And speaking of cream as well, it's about chopping it up into little reels that you can use for social media.
Yeah. I mean, Joe Rogan is certainly one of my favorites and a hero of mine. I think the guy is brilliant.
He is.
So when my idea to do this show was watching Joe Rogan, I said, you know what? It would be cool if I had my own show, had my own guests come on. We talked about everything, rock and roll related.
And yeah, I mean, I get a kick out of it. They're having a cocktail, they're smoking a joint. I mean, they're talking, but it's real. Like, speak real. I don't like people that are fake. I don't like people that are not loyal. If you're going to ask me about things I don't like, that's what I don't like. Don't be fake. Don't be disloyal to me. If you say to my face you're going to do something, you say that you care about me, don't turn your back and say something else. I just rather you tell me you don't, right? It's just much easier for all of us because eventually I'm going to figure it out. And if I was that way to you, you wouldn't like it either. Nobody likes that. But it's all funny how you can't fool yourself. Right? You can say you've done something when in your mind, you didn't do it.
Well, yeah.
So the only person you're fooling is yourself. And it's very hard to be real. And hey, listen, I've done a lot of stupid things in my life. I really have. And hopefully I learn from them. Being a young man, you do some dumb things.
I think some of your...
I'm surprised I'm alive at this age because of some of the dumb things I
Wow.
did. But, I'm happy to be here and fortunate.
Well, I think some of your best qualities are, you're a very good judge of character. I think you can read people really quickly, right? And that's a Northeast thing, I believe.
Northeast thing. My wife's very good at it. My daughter's very good at it. My son's a little more trusting of a lot of people, but it's part of the reason him and I'm mentoring him about business because unfortunately, you would like to believe that everybody you do business with, your clients, your vendors, and everybody's got nothing but the best intentions for you. And the truth is that's not true. So you got to know how to weed that out and still be a good person. You don't have to be a dick to treat people nice. You just have to understand how you can let people in. And unfortunately, sometimes, Kurt, understand that sometimes you got to cut people loose. You got to do it with friends. You got to do it with family sometimes. You got to do it with customers. I have customers I fire, right? How do you fire a customer? Well, this is not working out.
Yeah.
It's not a mutually
Well,
agreeable
I think it's all in the approach, the way you do it.
It is. I'm never disrespectful in doing it unless they are. If you cross me, then we're going to see a different side of me. But very, very few people do that. They realize that I'm a pretty straightforward guy, and I'll protect the people I care
in our
about.
final minute, you're known for giving out a lot of advice, and you've been doing the radio thing a lot longer than I have. This is my third podcast. So, what advice do you have for me for the Jacked Up podcast with K-Rock? What are some pointers or tips you can give us, or give me, in this final minute?
The best tips I would tell you would be have a variety of different people. No matter whether it's rock and roll related or not, because this show is based on your ability in music and leader of a band. Bring anybody on. Get people's views and their input because what people want to see is what I said. People were real. Whatever experience. There's a YouTube channel called Soft White Underbelly, and this guy does some really amazing interviews of people from walks of life that you probably would never want to listen to that interview until you go on and start listening because it gives you a different perspective about people. And the more people you surround yourself with and the more experiences they bring to your podcast and to you, the more everybody grows. You, them, everybody, and your listeners. So.
Well, thank you for that. So I have to promote my band before we go.
Jacked Up.
So jackedupband.com, www.jackedupband.com. You can see our schedule and our videos and our pictures. Social media, Jacked Up Sarasota, Facebook, X, or on Instagram. There's a site called Go Tonight where you can see all of our dates.
And so they're just a little cover band, ladies and gentlemen. They've got all these other outlets you can find them on. Are you kidding? They're a really good band. You guys are really...
Thank you so much, man. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming to the shows. I appreciate you jumping up and singing with us because you're really good at that too. So you're very talented yourself.
My ultimate pleasure.
So thank you very much for coming in. And we'll be in touch. See you soon.
Enjoy the chat.
I will. Thank you.